Hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. My guest today is Dhiraj Rajaram, who is the founder of Mu Sigma. He warned me to make sure that my expectations were not too far away from the, average. And so for any of you math geeks, you are going to find that hilarious, and everybody else will have no idea what I'm talking about, but that's okay. Dhiraj has built an incredible company in an industry, or I don't even know if it's an industry, a field, if it is just the world that we live in, managing data and interpreting it. And I really love the perspective that data is like crude oil. And so it depends what you do with it. And it's been neat seeing what other organizations have done working with your company. Dhiraj, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me over.
Excellent. And please, please, please feel free to put more math jokes throughout the podcast. I am more than happy to do that. My friends know that I love puns and I'm a nerd, so I'm excited for that. Dhiraj, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your origin story, how you founded Mu Sigma almost 20 years ago, and then I'll get into some questions with you.
Sure. So thanks again, Anthony. I'm Dhiraj. I'm the founder of Mu Sigma. Uh, we got started late 2004, early 2005. We today work with over 140 Fortune 500 clients. The thinking behind the company is that as the world keeps changing faster and faster, organizations need to see and look at their own businesses with new eyes. They need to change the way they think about problem solving inside their organizations. Certain big themes that we observed was that the world is going from a bigger is better world to a faster is better world. We are competing less on economies of scale, more on economies of speed. And in such a world, we are all being asked to produce not just products and services, but experiences. And therefore, a world of experiences and the world of interactions are quite connected with each other. So how should you think about problem solving? In the past, we've been thinking about it as separate entities. We feel that the future that we are currently already on, I feel, is one where we have to think about problem solving as interactions. Just to put this perspective, you and I are entities in this podcast, but what we produce together is an interaction. And our viewers are going to see this interaction. So seeing that, doing all the things that to make interactions between math, business, technology, behavioral science, design thinking is going to become important. Doing everything to make interactions between marketing, supply chain, risk, product is going to be interesting. And that kind of world requires new capabilities, a new kitchen in which you can make those types of food. And that's what Mu Sigma has been working with large Fortune 500 companies as their transformation Sherpa. It's their climb for sure, but we are with them during that climb, making sure that they can do well. So that's the company. We happen to also be India's first unicorn, first or second unicorn, depending on who you ask and how you ask. And we took in about $14 million of primary capital from very reputed investors. That included people like Sequoia Capital, General Atlantic, FTV Capital, all of these guys, and a whole bunch of secondary also, but returned about $900 million to all of them. So we built a very valuable business that has trained more than 15,000 people on what we think of as a new way to think about problem solving while helping all of these Fortune 500 clients. So, so that's the company at a very high level and my background. Um, uh, Hopefully, that gives you a setup to ask me questions.
Oh yeah, I'll think or something. No, I think it's well, okay. What are the couple things that I take away? One is how fast the world moves, but not in the sense that it needs to move fast. It's the complexity and the essence of the fact that everything is interaction. So you have everybody moving fast, everybody making these big decisions, arguably better, larger, faster than ever before. And your ability to make sure that those interactions, as impactful or as voluminous, are the air quotes best ones. What is the approach that you take into that to support long-term fundamental and sustainable thinking, and that goes across all gamuts. It's not just where do we sell, how do we market, but how does every aspect of our organization do that. And then the fact that you work with these Fortune 500s who are, from one point of view, making the largest economic decisions save countries. It serves them well to bring as much insight, but context and thought process into it. And how do leaders like yourself and others do that while supporting, let's call it, good business? If the answer was always just extract as much as possible, they might not be the best fit for you, and I'm not kind of saying that they are, but the ability to be able to make those decisions. And what I actually truly like looking at your website, the Trimuti, in terms of the concept of how you make decisions and looking at the past, present, future, and presumably incorporating that into how you want people to think about decision making. So I guess my first,
Absolutely.
yeah. So how, if you were to support our listeners in better decision making, whether that's understanding more math, whether that's looking conceptually, but I guess either A, what would you encourage them to do? Or B, how do you approach decision making personally, distinct from a company?
Um, so let me take a step back and first ask, just to take your question and elaborate on it a little better.
Please.
Uh, I mean, what's a good decision?
Mm.
Um, and if I were to ask myself that question, a good decision has two components to it. One is the big T, which is truth, and the other is the small t, which is time it takes to take that decision, time to get to that truth,
Mm.
right? And through that, your confidence level is high enough to take actions and so on and so forth. While we while you introduced us by talking about data being the crude oil, the big D is not data. The big D is decisions.
Mm.
And there's a reason why we say crude oil, because a lot of refining on that oil has to happen before you make it useful and create energy out of it. And therefore, this aspect of data and facts and unarguable things, evolving and objective things, evolving into dialogue, and from there evolving eventually into uh, decisions. Uh, and by that time, the objective has to give away to some amount of subjectivity. Is going to be very, very important. And we are also seeing that the world that we live in has more parts than before, and more parts that are interacting, and through which you have an increase of complexity. Uh, Unless you address this complexity, uh, you through detailing, you have to detail stuff. You are not making, the decision with the eyes fully wide open.
Mm.
So the ability to address complexity, seeing the parts in your business, seeing how they interact, understanding how the parts are changing and how the interactions are changing, to see the whole system more holistically is going to become very, very important. There
Can
are
you
new
can you
fields.
outline detailing for me, just so I can understand if it's a capital D detailing or just a yeah? What do you mean by detailing?
Well, I mean, just the detail, just getting to the details of stuff.
Okay,
So
got it.
there's things, you could tell me you live in Palo Alto, or you could tell me that you live in a certain street, a certain address, right next to a location. So the more details you give me, the more interesting that useful that information becomes to anybody doing anything with that you know with that information. So that aspect of uh, getting to the details allows you to address complexity.
Got that. Perfect. Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was, but I think the example or the explanation was the more detail you have, the better decision you can make. And if you stay at surface level data, you can make surface level decisions. If you, and again, I don't know if that wasn't necessarily what you were saying, but that's what I take from
Absolutely.
it. Sorry, I interrupted you in terms of both how you were thinking of decision making, the truth, the time to truth, and then how you use that information to refine. And so, if you've got anything else to share there, otherwise I'll ask you, what are you seeing from leadership teams as they go through the process of using the information that comes out of the work that you do, or the work that they're being trained on? How do they come to those truths? How do they objectively decide what is the best given the level of detail that they're at?
Yeah. I think if I want to, if I was a leader of a large Fortune 500 company today, I'm I'm faced with change that's originating from various places. It can be the supply side, it can be the demand side, it could be geopolitical risks, it could be consumer behavior changes, it could be new technology, which is constantly challenging the way you think about the world. All of this are things that these leaders are faced with. If I'm a if I am Walmart or Home Depot, or Procter and Gamble, you know, uh, I don't think my customer thinks about, is not, and if I'm a marketing person in one of those things or a supply chain person, the customer doesn't care about where you are, what your role is inside an organization. He looks at it as a Walmart problem or a Home Depot problem or a Procter and Gamble problem. So I think this aspect of understanding what are the first order effects and what are the second order effects in the journey making process is going to become very, very, the journey of decision making process is going to be very important. The second thing what we see is that these organizations are on the path that problem solving used to take in the past was extremely linear. For every one current state, you had a future state, and you could take a very linear engineering based approach where you could go and hit the future state. But in a world of lot more uncertainty, for every one current state, there could be multiple future states. And decision making today is not about getting to the right answer, but even sometimes the less wrong answer.
Mm.
And in that world, uh, you know, your journey towards circling around all the future states, understanding those future states, and then deciding which future state you want to look at, is going to become very, very important. A world of uncertainty to a large extent requires the organization to be a producer of optionality.
Mm.
So in the past, you won um, through good execution and then good exploitation of that execution. So, but today, even before you execute, you need to have a wide variety of options on which you could execute. So, exploration becomes as important as execution, more relative to the past. So, and when I say exploration, I mean create options for yourself. When I say execution, be predictable and execute on those, any one of the options that you're choosing the path. And exploitation is the monetization part of the making the money. So this is going to become very, very important. So organizations that industrialize the exploration process, that can reduce the cost per question, increase curiosity quotient, in the organization, is going to become very, very important.
Mm. And, as a lay person, and I think about the possibility, all the alternatives, in a very rudimentary approach, it's, like a scenario planning based approach, if this, then that, and using like logic models or whatever to determine the least bad enough for yourself or for the organization. But then how would you recommend, or how would you think about, creating optionalities in the future? Is it a culture of wondering or asking what if? Is it a function of making sure that you have a lot of I don't know what like thermometers is a bad example, but you can like test the pulse or check the water like across, like what do you, or is it just extreme communication so that there are a lot of lenses on the alternate futures that could be possible for these organizations, business lines, teams, and people, or all of the above?
It's a great question. I think, I hate to say this, but it's all of the above.
Yeah.
And, and from that perspective, I would say that uh, many of these organizations will will have to put structures in place. Uh, and I like, I'm a foodie, so I like to use the following analogy: the food that you have made in the past is not the food you're going to make in the future. If you were to look at problem solving and solutioning as food, for the problems you have, you, if your hunger is the problem and you're making different kinds of food is the solutions. So if you're changing the food, you need a new kind of kitchen.
Mm.
But the organizations of today are looking to make the new kind of food with the old kitchen. That's not going to be possible. So the many of these organizations, they have to work on learning new recipes for sure, but at the same time they have to also build a new kind of kitchen inside that will allow them to do more with less people, that will allow them to do more faster, that will allow them to do more in a sustainable manner. And last, but not the least, that will allow them to be open to the fact that they might not know the problems they will face in 6 months, but they have to be ready to solve those problems and have enough capacity and slack to solve those problems. So, so that's all of this requires preparing them, and that's what we are doing with many of these organizations.
Awesome. And I find that the food analogy, because I think we have a lot of leaders who sometimes struggle to have their leaders or other organization, looking forward and, to keep it saying, hey, well, if we do things the way we've always done them, we'll get the results that we always want. So it's not just about doing new things, but building new capacities. And one of the things that I couldn't happen to kind of speculate on is that, as an organization, Fortune 500, let's say they're looking 10 years out. Well, the decisions that they make in year 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, so on, will impact the 30 or 40 or 50 years out based on their specializations, based on what they do or don't do. And I just find it so interesting, the longevity conversation. So being a millennial, some of our folks they don't, there's like a planned obsolescence. There isn't a built for long term. Whereas how can you build the sustainability of these organizations, given the complexity and given the fact that an organization can come and can go, and there are a select few that have continuously done innovation well. And then we've talked a lot about innovation as a thing that happens because a person did it, but less around A, do they have the system to support innovation? And B, what are the inputs of that system so that the ingredients and the kitchen kind of match up to provide as close to a good recipe as possible? Because you still need good cooks, even if you have a good kitchen and good food.
Absolutely. And just to take what you said a step further, this aspect of decision making is an emergent phenomena. A decision is not something that an individual make, but a decision is mostly in an organization what interactions between individuals make.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, seeing, allowing for the right kind of, the right ecosystem for chemistry, to happen, so that you have the best possible emergent decisions occur on more often.
Mm.
And it's also important that you make you have the ability to make wrong decisions and correct it. I think the weightage on the emphasis on always making the right decisions sometimes can put fear into people, and that slows things down in a big way. And that's where the focus on the big T of truth can come, that can hurt you with the small t of time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So having that right optimization from between the big T and the small t is going to become very, very important. And you used a very important word called complexity, right? It's the very nature of our world to become more and more complex. It's that's built into our ecosystems, right? Now, the very nature of complexity is that it's going to uh, obfuscate things. The spaghettification of the organization starts happening, and you have to be able to deal with that. Any organization, Anthony, is one where the purpose of the organization is to machine ideas, right? And the idea evolves. In the beginning, it's just there's a content part of the idea, with data and some facts and some hypotheses and all of those things, and then it becomes conversations between people. It gets socialized, support gets built for it, and then if when enough support is there, the business puts enough budgets into putting it in the compute environment with software and databases and all the good stuff, and then it gets consumed and commercialized. Now, with all of this unaddressed complexity that you just talked about, the first thing that happens is there's a lack of transparency of all of the content. So, you don't, the spaghetti hides most of, what is happening inside, right? The second thing, there is a lack of persistence in the conversations.
Mm.
We are all living with, in a world where our work is extremely interdependent, but our work schedules want to be independent, you know so so there's a lack of persistence of conversations, and eventually there is a lack of cumulativeness of the work. So you land up doing one-off projects in different places. So solving for all of this, in a world of exploration, requires new tools, new methods, and even new not just skill sets and tool sets, but also new mindsets.
Mm.
So That's we are living in interesting times.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I will say, well, there's so much I took in that, how building the right ecosystem. When we talk about strategy implementation, we focus less on doing a bunch of tasks and making sure that the environment for that is supported. So I think we speak the same language there. One of the things we think about is like an acceptable level of failure, because as you look at decisions, and I kind of balance that with we had a guest talk about the perfection trap, is that some people are so worried about getting the perfect answer, whereas like a good enough answer fast.
Yeah.
And then when I was getting married and I asked my friend, what if am I rushing into this? And he said, well, worst case scenario, it's a speeding ticket. And I said, wait, he said, yeah, you go too fast, you pay a fine. But sometimes that's how it goes. And especially with by the way, apologies to anybody that's offended by that. I'm sorry. My wife and I are still together. We're having a great time. But, for organizations that are trying to make decisions, and to your point, not the right decision, but the best decision, and then balancing that with data, the data that you have versus the data that exists. And then there's some decisions that are objectively wrong and end up being successful. For example, if he said, hey, I'm going to start up a business objectively, or there are a small sample size of failures or successes relative to the many failures, certain product lines that if you polled people, they would say that's not good. It's, you'll never buy it. And then they become giant successes. So managing that, but then also having the system and the communication and the transparency as an organization to understand, hey, we have to make certain decisions that are going to be better or worse for us. Unfortunately, we're running low on time. I have two questions. One, I don't know if it's just my view. Is this a pie symbol in your glasses, or does it just happen to look like that?
It just looks like that.
Okay, just look like that. Okay, because I was going to ask you, given that we have, managers and leaders, some of them at their early stages of career, whether they have, statistical modeling at their disposal, or, if they're using scenario planning or alternative based approach, how would you recommend that they start thinking about building those systems within their organizations? What are one or two things that they could do to support that long-term, more systemic thinking in a complex world?
Look, I think, um, I think the nature of technology uh, is to allow human beings to get more throughput, uh, you know, uh, so do more work in less time. That's the nature of technology, and because of that, you know, all of this, complex statistics, econometrics, operations research, AI, everything. There's tools for that right now. So if you're if you're running a large organization, uh, you know, while you need to have an appreciation for that, you don't need to know all of that. You know, it's kind of like, do how to pluck the right mushrooms if you were left in a jungle? Probably you don't, because, well, we've evolved to such a way that you can buy mushrooms on Whole Foods,
Mm.
right? So I think that the same thing is happening with many things, where things are, you have lots of good tools and platforms and, processes to help you that. But the curation of that and making sure that you have the right teams who are structured to industrialize the exploration process. Information technology as a group uh, was primarily used to industrialize the execution process. So build a better accounts payable system, build an accounts receivable system, implement your ERP, the SAP ERP system. Now, when you want to build an exploration system, happens at the interaction between business and technology. It means the problem solver, technology, and the solution consumer have to constantly be speaking to each other and interacting with each other. We don't have those forums established well in large Fortune 500 companies yet. So the ability to take a muddy and fuzzy problem and take that problem statement and convert it into a better problem definition before solving it, looking at various aspects of it, and do it in a very iterative manner. That's not yet happened in many large Fortune 500 companies, and that's also one of the reasons why they get disrupted by smaller companies who still don't have that complexity.
Yeah.
So that's how I would look at it.
Excellent. Well, I will take the opportunity to plug myself, because as a SME strategy, we facilitate strategic planning sessions, conversations, so that you can get aligned as a team, communicate the information that you need so that there is transparency, and make sure that you can make the best air quotes, best decisions for you long term. So visit smestrategy.net if you're looking for somebody to support you with that. And of course, reach out to Dhiraj and his team if you're looking for some more information on Mu Sigma. Dhiraj, where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more about the amazing work you and your team is doing? And we'll say goodbye for today.
Yeah, we are at www.mu-sigma.com. Thank you for this opportunity. I hope this was useful for you.
It was fantastic, and I think one of the things that I'm taking away from today is just the ability to make good decisions as an organization, big and small, and the interactions of all things within the business and how they lead up to it. People are inundated from the marketing and sales side with data, and they're kind of used to it. But I think that the proliferation of opportunities and the proliferation, and the word that you used, industrialization of them, I think is the ability to do that is really what's going to set these organizations apart. If you're interested in the stock market, those are some things. How good are the organizations at doing that? And then even just from like business sustainability, innovation, and on the social side, solving the world's problems. We got a lot of problems, and our ability to industrialize those ideas will drive that solution. So hopefully people get better at it faster. But Dhiraj, thank you again so much for sharing with me. It was such a pleasure, and wishing you all the best moving forward.
Thank you.
Folks, my guest today is Dhiraj Rajaram, who is the founder at Mu Sigma. One of the things that I take away again for you is to have those conversations as an organization, to create those, dare I say, collisions, but having good data, the right amount of data, transparent data, so that everybody can make good decisions, and then balancing truth and the time it takes to get to truth, time to truth, triple T, if you like, will just help your organization get better. And don't try to solve it. Just get incrementally better so that you can make better food. Dhiraj, I'm going to have to go out to a restaurant with you one time you tell me your best food. But folks, this has been the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. Thank you again, Dhiraj. My name's Anthony Taylor. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.